The Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Bajwa is set to retire this November, and the race is hotting up for who will be the next Pak Army Chief. And that's an extremely important position, considering in Pakistan the military actually carries a lot of weight in terms of the functioning of the country, as actually the main pillar of Pakistan in terms of the say, the stake in the functioning, the governance, and in terms of the direction of the country. And therefore, the contender for the next army chief in Pakistan becomes an extremely important candidate to look out for. General Bajwa can still spring a surprise and say that he will take an extension, because he's going to be retiring in November, which is when he turns 61. He can get an extension till 64. However, so far he has been saying that he will not take an extension and he will call it a day. So now let's look at the next 4 candidates, or the 5 candidates who are the top in line in terms of seniority, as well as the people whose names is really doing the rounds of who can be picked. Interestingly, seniority is one of the criteria, but 4 out of the 5 people actually are from the same batch, and therefore seniority in terms of the number of years of service actually doesn't apply to them. So let's look at the candidates one by one, and also look at which are the battalions they come from, what are the specializations that they have, and what will be the implications in terms of for India or for the neighborhood, depending on their area of expertise. The first person I'm going to talk about is Lieutenant General Sahir Shamshad Mirza. Now, he is between the 4 people in the same batch, with a slight amount, you might say, the senior most. He's an extremely able candidate. He's supposed to be an outstanding officer. He's been a DGMO. He belongs to the Sindh regiment. But one point that I'd like to point out is that he's had a very active role in 2 of the neighborhood areas, and one is Afghanistan, one is China, but he's also played a role in Gilgit and Baltistan. Besides that, one really other important point as far as Lieutenant General Shamshad Mirza is concerned is that he was involved in the operation against Taliban Pakistan, and that is one of the groups that's been giving them trouble throughout Punjab, through Peshawar, the entire area, and North Waziristan. So that is actually an important point. And last in 2021, he was posted as a corps commander in Rawalpindi, which is normally, just to let you know as I go ahead, most of the lieutenant generals who are being considered for the post of army chief are expected to become corps commanders at least for a year. So he has served in the Rawalpindi corps command. The next person I'm going to talk about is Lieutenant General Azhar Abbas. And this is the person I will say is most important in terms of the India policy, or the Look India direction. Why? Because he has the most experience in dealing with the Indian side of military operations within the Pakistan Army. And I'll tell you how. He's been the Chief of Staff, General Staff, which actually means that you are in that position effectively running the army. This is a de facto. Of course, General Bajwa is the head, but if you are the Chief of General Staff, then you are effectively looking at the operations of the army. So he has that experience. He has a lot of Kashmir experience, and that I would like to say is extremely important in terms of the kind of confidence that he might be enjoying of General Bajwa. So why this is so important is the person who handles Kashmir is the person who would be having a lot of confidence would have won the confidence of the general. He would be in his complete confidence. These are the most secretive operations. These are perhaps the most important operations for Pakistan. And he's done that. He's commanded the Kashmir-centric X-Corps, which is very, very, again, I said, India-centric operations. They also, of course, would be backing some sort of subversive activities. And therefore, he becomes an important person. And besides looking at the Kashmir Corps, he's been handling operations of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which is again makes him the candidate with the most India experience, the most Kashmir experience, even in the Pakistan occupied Kashmir side of operations, and that is why he's the person that India must look out for. The third person I'm going to be talking about is Lieutenant General Norman Mahmood, and he's belongs to the Baloch Regiment. He's got a more, what you might say, the teaching experience. He's been at the National Defence University there. Even earlier he was teaching in Balochistan, Quetta. He's commanded an infantry division which was based in North Waziristan, which is important, and he is within the ISI being the Director General of Analysis. So he's had one foot within the ISI as far as the analysis bit. As I said, he's the most, possibly the most academic out of the candidates that we are looking at, and he's been looking after the communication and information technology section of the General Headquarters of the Pakistan Army. But one thing about him is I want to talk about the most important assignment that he's looked at, and he's looked at the Peshawar-based the 11th Corps, and he was posted there as a commander in 2019. And why this is so critical is he was overseeing operations in the Pakistan-Afghanistan border and the activity there at a time when America was withdrawing its troops from Afghanistan. So there was a policy change. He was actively involved in that. He was actively involved in the border there. He was actively involved, also would be looking at in terms of the movement between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and therefore possibly one of the most critical assignments that he's handled is the Pak-Afghan border during the American withdrawal. Now I come to the most interesting profile, and because it is interesting, it also makes it difficult for him, and that's Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid. And you would have 100% heard of him before, because you remember that he was the DG ISI when Imran Khan was the Prime Minister, and the contention or the bone of contention between him and General Bajwa was Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid. You know, there's some sorcery and there's some kind of prediction and everything that goes on, which is make-believe, or it's grapevine, or it's actually true. But the fact of the matter is that Imran Khan's wife had been, who's supposed to be a Pirni, had kind of advised him that it's better for Faiz Hamid to be in ISI or continuous tenure there. And General Bajwa wanted him posted out to a Corps command, and that was the bone of contention in terms of what should be the length of his tenure, etc. And that was the breaking point between the army, which is also called the establishment, and Imran Khan. And after that, you know, it went all downhill, and you know, Imran Khan no longer is the Prime Minister, and possibly one of the spokes because of the person because of whom this happened is one of the major reasons is General Faiz Hamid. And he is in the contention, but because General Bajwa wanted him in the Peshawar Corps, and eventually he was sent there, but it wasn't a very long tenure. They actually shifted him to the Bahawalpur Corps very soon after that. And because he's been in the highlight of the reason why Imran Khan might have had to go, it actually ruins his chances. That one wonders whether General Bajwa will actually propose his name or recommend his name through the Ministry of Defence or through directly, whatever informal, formal way, to Shahbaz Sharif because of the kind of antecedent of Faiz Hamid. And just to, besides this point that I told you, he did, as a background, he belongs to the Baloch regiment and he's been the chief of staff of the ex-corps. But the main thing is of the DGISI and him being moved to Peshawar Corps, which was the point that I wanted to make about him. The other person amongst the people who's in the same batch is Lieutenant General Muhammad Amir, and he belongs to the artillery regiment and commanding the Triple X Corps in Gujranwala. Of course, he is a close confidant. He's a quiet guy, close confidant of General Bajwa. He was earlier an adjutant general at the general headquarters. And he's also been a military secretary to Asif Zardari. So I think he has a solid background, but he's not that high profile like I mentioned about some of the other people. So out of these four people are the main contenders, out of whom you're probably going to see one of those people picked. But before I go, I'm going to tell you one more name, and that is of Lieutenant General Asim Munir. And he's actually senior to all these four people who are in the same batch. And he's extremely able Lieutenant General. He's an outstanding officer as far as Pakistan Army is concerned. However, there's a technical issue in terms of him, the timing of his joining and the timing of his promotion to 3-star general level, which is the Lieutenant General level. And because of this technicality, he might also actually be retiring around November, and if his name had to be proposed, possibly it had to be done earlier. So basically his age and his the fact that he is supposed to have actually joined a little late in the Lieutenant General level goes against him, and is most likely the reason which might actually weaken his chances, even though he's not out of the contention. But the fact is that because of this reason, the other four candidates probably have a slightly better chance than Lieutenant General Asim Munir, though he's supposed to be actually the senior most amongst the people that I just mentioned.